Okay, I believe we are live. Welcome to the first Patch Lab. Let's see if I can find this stream on the channel. I'm very nervous, so bear with me. Got this new headset mic that I'm trying out today, which will hopefully be able to give us super clean audio without me having to have a mic in the shot the whole time. Okay. Cool. Okay, so that looks all right. So basically, my intention is to play for you this patch that I set up last night. Forgive me, I'm a little bit nervous. Don't usually do live stream. And then the intention is to kind of pull all of the cables out of the rack and really slowly and really casually maybe do a patch from scratch and see what we can do. I'm certainly very new to the world of Eurorack. So this is going to be super slow and maybe a little bit tedious. But bear with me and thanks for joining in today. Hey, what's happening, Tony? Welcome, Matt. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? This is the first time that I'm testing out this new headset. We're going to bring up the audio here. If you can let me know if you can hear me and if you can hear the music, that'd be fantastic. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm finding that the Eurorack system is absolutely amazing for live jamming. For those of you who've been following my channel for any amount of time, you know that I love the live jams. Can hear you perfectly. All right, that's a great sign. Gonna jam out a little bit, maybe wait for a few more people to join the stream, and then I'm gonna pull all of the cables from the rack and we're just gonna casually hang out, talk about Eurorack, do some patching, just have a little fun. Thanks for joining me. Yes, the drums are coming from the rack. All of the sounds are coming from the rack. The kick drum is coming from the Tip Top Audio 1 sampler module, and I've got loaded into there some kick drums that I've made from a sample pack called Rank Stank Kicks. They're really dirty and nasty kick drums. We've got a hat coming from another Tip Top Audio module, sampler module. We've got hi-hats coming from the 2HP hat module. Sound a little bit like this. And I'm running some really slow and subtle LFO on these hats so that we're getting a little bit of movement happening in real time on these. The modules allow you to plug in CV, and then, basically it's like you would be turning the knob in real time, but you're using an LFO to be turning the knob in real time. So here, like on the hi-hats, for instance, I'm able to use an LFO to adjust the way that they're opening and closing and a little bit of the sparkle in the hat. We've got the kick running through a filter, so I can kind of filter that down if I want to. We've got a little bit of a percussion blip happening here from the 2HP snare module, which I'm really in love with for these kind of like percussion blips. I need to get a little bit better with the system and figure out how I can actually route things exactly the way that I would like to route things, and maybe be able to route, more than one thing at a time to the reverb and stuff like that. I've got quite a bit of in and out capability on the system. That was really an important thing for me when choosing exactly what modules to get and how to put this sort of a thing together. Um, I actually have a mono out on this side so that I can send any signal in the case out to like a mono guitar pedal or an effect unit of any kind. And on this side, I've got a stereo out so that I can send any signal in the case out to like a stereo effects processor. Over on this side, I've duplicated the stereo effects out. These are Strymon AA1 modules that allow me to send the Eurorack out, and it sort of like attenuates that down to a line signal, which is a little bit lower in volume than a Eurorack signal, and then allows me to bring that signal right back in. So yeah, so I'd love to be able to get a little bit, better at routing, so that maybe stuff like this cool percussion sound could have like, reverb and delay on it instead of being super dry. But I'm super, super new to all of this. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sticking with me for a few. Just gonna have a sip of coffee. These Audio-Technica headphones with a mic are brand new. Just got them yesterday. And if you look carefully, they're really, really loose. I kind of have a small head, apparently, and these just are as tight as they go. So I don't really get to move around quite as freely as I would like to, which is kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. Here we have the audio that I'm running out of the system into my main mixer. We've got an output from that running into my sound card, which allows me to, visualize the audio that I'm creating in real time. So that way I can kind of help balance the tonal qualities of the audio and see the EQ visually in real time to help me mix and whatnot. So these chords here are samples. These are chord samples that I made from the Quasi-MIDI Sirius. And what I did was, it's just an F minor, right? But I made a couple different variations. So like one of them will be shorter, one of them will be longer, one of them will have like the filter turned down, one of them will have the filter turned up or whatever. So we're using the Squarp Rample sample player, and it allows me to load up 12 mono samples, and by default it will cycle through those randomly as you play back those samples. So I'm using the Mazatron Golden Shower sequencer, which I just did a video on. If you missed that, check out that video, because this sequencer is amazing to play with. I'm using the Golden Shower to trigger those chord samples in real time. I find this is amazing for jamming, because I can just, in real time kind of turn that off, then just, assign any 8-step pattern I want in real time, including all 8 steps. So it's just going to continually, really I've got the kick drum running through an envelope from 2 HP so that I can, in real time, bring the decay down on that, make it really tight. So if I mute everything else, the kick drum is actually still going back there, but it's just, kind of down to a transient instead of that big punch. And then in real time, I can roll the decay up on that kick drum to get the body back in. Really fat and dirty kick drum. I've got that running through the WMD Devices new carbon filter, which is ridiculously dreamy. Let me show you one of the things that really tipped me off to this carbon filter from WMD. Currently, I'm just set to a low pass filter. The kick is running directly in. Okay, I can just filter that down, right? You know, just kind of what you would expect from a low pass filter with just very little resonance, not a lot of resonance. But check this out. It has these great saturation and fold modes. Just by one button there, I'm into, like, you know, dirty territory and more saturated and more driven territory. I can actually make that a bit more extreme as well. Another level there. And one more. So yeah, just by running it through a low pass filter with these, you know, drive and saturation levels turned up, I can really get a completely different sound, like really, it's like a musical filter, I would say, and I'm really able to use it to sculpt the frequencies of the sounds. If you've been following my channel for any amount of time, you know that I'm really, really about the sculpting and the EQ, and especially being able to do it in real time like this. Hey, what's happening, Ed? All the patch cables do get a little bit overwhelming. Let me show you what I've got set up here. If we can move the camera a little bit. Over here, I've got a rack, which has kind of got a bunch of cables of different, you know, lengths organized. Here I have some cables that are like 1 into 2. I've got shorter cables. I've got longer cables. I had to get some really long cables so that I would be able to get signals from one rack case to the other rack case. I actually started out with the Eurorack idea, trying to go really small. I was looking at the IntelliGel, the very small pallet cases, and I was on the Modular Grid website trying to design which modules that I would want to get to put in that case if I were, you know, to actually go down the road, which I did. But what happened is, as I was getting that case filled up, I was really trying to get as many modules in there that I could and learning about the different modules. And I really got excited about these 2 HP modules because they only take up 2 HP space in your rack. But I have a lot of really specific needs, you know, personally in my production. For instance, I needed to get a mixer that I needed to have some EQ built in. So I ended up with this hex mix from Bifaco, which has the 3-band EQ, high, mid, and low on all 6 channels. But you can see it takes up, like, you know, this much of the system in a small pallet case. I mean, so I quickly kind of outgrew the idea of a small case. The pallet case would only, you know, power, I think, 20 or so modules, and I had more modules than that in there already. So I started looking at some larger cases, and I ended up with this case from MDLR. It's got 2 rows and then a row of 1 U in the middle, which I'm able to get some of the utility modules from IntelliGel in. And I also found a really special module that I'm in love with that barely fits in the 1 U, and it's called Sloth. And basically, it's like just a really slow moving random LFO kind of thing to help put some more movement into the system. You can't clock it. It's not like something that syncs the time. It just kind of, you assign it to stuff and it just sort of moves slowly in the background. Sloth. I really like that one. Let's see here. Is this headset screwing my hair up pretty good? Yeah. Bear with me as I try to get used to all this new technology here and try to keep going and keep expanding the channel, guys. Hey, we got Spider in the house. What's happening, Spider? Thanks for stopping in. All right. We got Russ. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm basically just hanging out, exploring the Eurorack, trying to get a little bit more comfortable with live streaming, trying to get a little bit more comfortable wearing a headset and a mic and talking to you guys in real time. Let me just jam on this a tiny bit more before I pull all these cables out, because it's kind of a little bit of a personal tragedy every time you go pull all the cables out. It took me quite a bit of time to put this one together. I'm pretty slow still at all this. Listen real close if you're on headphones. And when I turn the cord stabs off, the Desmodus Versio reverb is still holding like a tone in the background. I mean, there's no chords playing, but that melodic tone is still hanging in the air there. And you can kind of reassert that tone and re-trigger that sort of atmosphere by just throwing another couple of samples into the reverb. I can do something like turn the kick drum off if I'm live jamming, and then use the envelope on that kick drum to turn the decay way down. Excuse me, so that when I bring it back in, we have a really light kick to work with. So I'm learning how to kind of ebb and flow with the system. Right? We could drop out the hi-hats and the clap. So we've gone from that thundering kick with lots of chords in the hat to just this kind of late night chilled vibe. Again, I'm using the Mazatron Golden Shower. Silly name jokes aside, this is an amazing sequencer and absolutely, quite possibly my favorite module so far, just because literally in real time, I'm not even, like there's not even a reset here. It's just taking the clock, and then, let me move the camera so that you guys can see this. Let me see if I can still stay plugged in here. All right, then we're gonna push this down just a little bit here. Okay. Whoops, and now I've got I'm all cabled in here. Nothing's wireless, so all I have to do is just turn the pattern select knob on the Mazatron, and it's an 8-step repeating pattern. Whichever of the steps lights up, it will trigger, whatever I'm triggering with the unit at that time. And if I turn it all the way up, it triggers all 8 steps. And at any time during the jam, you can just scroll it all the way to the left and turn it on and off in real time. I could always mute it as well, but I've got this coming in on a stereo channel as opposed to a mono channel like everything else in the mix. So it's a little bit much to have to, mute in and out in real time. I really like being able to just, at any time, just kind of, send another hit there to it. Hey, what's happening, Sean? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet and start pulling some of these cables out, rather all of these cables out. And we're going to patch something. Ocean in Space, thanks for joining me. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and change the camera back a little bit to give us a little bit more room here. Can everybody still hear me okay? Can everybody still hear the music okay? I tried pretty hard to get this levels set up okay in the beginning, but you never know as we're running. I don't really get a level, check on the phone per se. I'm live streaming on an iPhone 8 Plus, by the way. I've got an Ovation Audio Hub 2x4 audio interface plugged into the phone, and I'm taking it out from my main mixer into that audio interface. All of this stuff on the desk, including the microphone, is running into the mixer. So anything I run into my mixer now goes to the Audio Hub 2x4 and into the phone. So if this works out, I should finally, after a couple years of trying this YouTube thing, have a pretty solid setup for live streaming. So just let me know if, yep, loud and clear level's good. Oh, fantastic. All right, you guys. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and pull all of these cables out. One of the weird things about Eurorack so far that I've experienced is that once you send a clock into the system, I mean, it pretty much just kind of starts going, and it doesn't really stop is the thing. I sort of had this problem when working with the modular amp in the iPad in my rack, but I was finally able to get to find a way to get that, to start and stop all in sync and whatnot. And while the heart of this setup really is the Electron Digitact that's sending clock into the system. once it gets that clock, it's kind of an alive thing, that sort of just, grooves along in real time. So literally, as you're turning the unit on and off, like, I always felt sort of weird about just turning it off because it's literally moving. I mean, you wouldn't just like shut your gear down without pressing the stop button at least, and maybe hitting a save somewhere along the way. Um, but you don't with Eurorack. You literally just turn it off, and then when you turn it back on again, it just kind of starts going from whatever state the modules remember they were in. Some of them seem to remember the state they were in better than others, um, and that's something that I'm just exploring with so far. I took a ridiculous amount of time watching as many videos and tutorials as I could on as many modules as I could possibly, file away in my memory banks, and started making lots and lots of lists and notes. And somebody turned me on to the website Modular Grid. I believe it's modulargrid.net. And you can, literally tell the website what size and dimensions your case are. The website has literally every single Eurorack module that there is. They have some information about them and the size, the dimensions, the power requirements, and they'll let you, pick out the modules that you're interested in and lay those out in a case, so that when you're actually working with the case in real time, you know where your modules go. You can slide stuff around virtually without having to spend like a couple hours trying things out in the case. I believe this is the third major iteration of how I'm laying the modules out in this case so far. Again, I originally started out trying to get a much smaller case just to kind of get my foot in the door, but immediately kind of realized that I needed more modules than that case would power to do the kind of stuff that I want to do. Thought that I would be okay with this larger case, and I kind of hear this is the thing with a lot of people going, Eurorack, is that it's really complicated and it's really addicting. And as soon as you start, actually using the stuff, you realize, oh, well, maybe I'll need to have this module over here because I'm always patching this way, or now I'm, constantly running out of mixer inputs, or, whatnot. The first real issue that I ran into after the first sort of design and build of this was that I didn't have even remotely enough mixer inputs to actually route the audio all over the case the way that I actually wanted to do. And another thing was that I really wanted to be able to build something. Just take a breath here. That would have full integration, that I would be able to plug the iPad into, the computer into, my Digitact into, and that I would be able to plug anything in the case out of the case. I have a mono output and send on this side. I've got a stereo output and send on this side, and I've got a stereo output and send over here on this one. And what that means is that I can take stereo outputs from anything in the case and send those to external effects processors. And it also means that I can send a line level signal of anything into the case. So any of my synths, groove boxes, drum machines, I can route the audio in, I can route the audio out. We've got a main out, and I can bring the MIDI in and send that anywhere I want to from either a 5-pin MIDI. I'm using the Poly 2 module to get MIDI into the case. It allows me to plug in 5-pin MIDI with a little dongle. Okay, so we can get 5-pin MIDI into the case. That's how I'm getting the Digitact to talk to the case. We can also get USB MIDI directly in, and you can also plug in a MIDI controller, which I haven't actually done yet. Hey, Scott. Thanks for sticking around, guys. All right, let's see about patching something up and make some noise. This is probably going to be really slow and really tedious because I'm so new at this. But what let's try to do right off the jump is let's try to use the plates module, and let's try to get some chords happening out of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take an output from this module and I'm going to see if I can run it into the tuner on the Mordax data and see if we can tune this module. It looks like we're really close to an F right now. Maybe I can get a fine tune on that and get it closer. Let's see. Up. It's really sensitive. On the braids module for mutable instruments, I have a fine tune and a coarse tune, whereas on the plates, I currently only have what appears to be a very, very coarse tune. But we got that really close to an F, and we're going to go ahead and stick with that for now. What I want to do is I want to route this. Again, this is going to be, I'm going to use the chords synthesis module out of plates here, and we're going to use that. Let's use a shorter cable here. We're going to use that just to get ourselves a static chord sound right now. Okay, we're going to plug this out of the plates into a filter. We're going to run this into the carbon filter from WMD Devices. I have 2 of these. I have one in each side. I found immediately that I really need more filters. I have 2 filters. Again, my first issue was that I didn't have even remotely enough mixers to route the audio where I wanted to, and I had to seriously rethink the entire situation. And that's actually what got me into the second case, was the need for more mixers. Let's see here now, but what I really need now is more filters, but there's just only so much room. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get a signal coming out of this to, let's see, I'll take one of these longer ones. I might need, yeah, I'm going to need a much longer one. Excuse me for jumping in front of the camera here. Okay, so we're going to take we're taking a high pass filter out from the carbon filter. Whoops. Stepping on the cord here. Being hardwired in like this is it's kind of pulling on these and they're loose. It's not real comfortable, but it's definitely the best solution that I've come up with so far. Okay, so let's turn the volume on that. Okay, so we've got, okay, cool. In fact, that's a single tone. So let's I have these little divider, little Ninja Star jobbers that will allow you to plug in any signal you want. Okay, and then I have got, 2 outputs on this one. I've got some other ones. There's, 4 total on this one. Got a big one over here, little dividers, so you can split the signal up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to basically extend our cable here and also to turn the mono signal into a stereo signal so that we'll hear it out of both sides. All right, and let's see here. We're going to go ahead and plug this into the left side and the right side. And adjust these levels a little bit. Okay, now the mixer that I chose, the Hex Mix from Bafako, has panning on each channel, has panning and EQ on each channel. So I'm going to even out this EQ so that we're getting a pretty straight signal there. And you can hear, you probably can't hear because it's a live stream. But anyways, we're in stereo there. And what we're going to do is trying to scroll through the synthesis models here. Ooh. Boy, I really like that. That's just a low bass tone. I said we were going to get chords, but I'm not sure which one is the chords right off the jump. Ooh, there it is. So we've got different variations of the chord by turning the knob. Can you hear it changing there? Ooh, that's huge. That's totally cool. Okay, we're going to go with that. And what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to run that into an envelope, and then I'm going to trigger the envelope with the Mazatron Golden Shower to give us some sort of a rhythm. Let's see if we can figure this out here. Okay, what we want to do is, okay, so here I'm running into the mixer, but what we want to do is we want to run it into the envelope. Now, I've got some 3 options for envelopes right now, but I'm only familiar with using, one method of getting this happening yet. The other ones I haven't really had a chance to play with yet. There's only so many hours in the day. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the envelope system that I know how to work, and that's the 2HP ADSR and then the 2HP VCA. I'm going to run. Okay, so this wire here is our static output audio signal of that cord. I'm going to run that into the gate input of the ADSR module. Okay, can you guys still hear me? Okay, you still with me? Ignition. Hey, thanks, Sean. All right. Yeah, I spent so much time on the ignition pack. That one has more patterns than any other bank that I've done. Not 32, not 64. It's like 128 or 100. I can't even remember. It took so long. Put a lot of heart and soul into that ignition bank. Thanks. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's see here. So we're running into the ADSR, and what we need is some sort of a signal to trigger this. We're gonna run out. We're gonna run out of the ADSR into the in of VCA. I'm basically creating an envelope, and this is one of the hardest concepts for me personally to get my head around with Eurorack. Another one was, trying to divide pitch and gate. Anyways, okay, so all we need to do is we need to tell the VCA when it should open and allow the signal to come through. We're going to use the golden shower to do this, and we're going to plug the golden showers into sequencer. We're going to plug the output of that into the in of the VCA, and now all I have to do is take an out from, whoops, that's too short. Let's take this one. Take it out from the VCA into the input. Let's try this one here. And okay, what we need is we need a signal to we need like a tempo to tell the Mazatron what tempo it should be at. So let's get that set up. I'm using the Digitact as my main clock here. We're going to turn the tempo on the Digitact down to 120 beats per minute. I've got the Digitact sending its MIDI clock into the poly end module here, and we're going to take the MIDI clock into a multi so that I can take this clock signal and route it to several different destinations. I found this another, serious thing to get my brain around right in the beginning. I had one multi-module up here, which allows me to take like one signal and turn it into 3 identical signals, or like plug, 2 signals in and get 2 signals out, a couple of different variations. But what I really need is to be able to send the clock to a lot of different places. So I found a multiple called the 07 Mult, which literally allows you to plug in one clock and get 14 identical outputs to that if you want. You can also plug in like up to 4 different things and split it up, but basically you can send this clock signal wherever you need it to go without difficulty. It's super awesome. Hey, what's happening, guys? Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to need to just get the clock over here. We're going to need a long cable for that. So I'm going to go clock in, and I'm taking this out of our, clock over here. Maybe route this up and through so it's out of the way a little bit better. The routing of the cables, a whole thing. Okay, so now we're sending some gate out of the golden shower, okay? And we can see we're getting some CV here. And why am I not hearing this yet? There we go. Cool, we've got something happening. Let's get this decay. Cool. I'm not quite sure why it's doing exactly what it's doing. We're going to figure this out. Okay. I'm just probably routing it wrong. I'm not routing it wrong, though. Okay, so there's my signal. Okay, ADS. Bear with me here. We're gonna go, yeah, in, and then what am I doing here? Down to the end. That's all. This is all right. I'm just confused. Of course, when I try to do this in real time, it's acting the fool, when I've totally done this already. Okay, let me just rethink this and we'll see what we can figure out. I've got the it's so odd. What if I let's see here. What if I just take the out here into the other envelope that I'm not used to using, and we try that? Let's give that a go. We're going to take the out of the, okay, into the in on our filter here, and we're going to need to, yeah, I don't actually know how to clock this envelope, so we're going to pass on that. Let's see here. What am I doing wrong? We're going to solve this. We're taking the out from the filter, and we're going to just, again, yeah, cool. So then I'm not in. Do I need to? I actually have this, sketched out because it's confusing for me. But of course, I'm not. Here we go. Oh, this is hilarious. I can. I put it on Instagram so that I wouldn't. But of course, it's not gonna let me sign in. That's great. Oh well. Okay, so what am I doing wrong here? We're taking that. That's the. I'm sure that's. Gate out to the in. Okay, so here's the out to the in, and then we're gonna need. Unless we're using this. I think I got it this time. We're gonna use the out. When I do get it, it'll be magic. I promise. Let's see here, and then is this how I'm gonna do this? Put this into the gate. Yeah, okay, cool. I just routed it a little bit wrong. Actually, that's what I was saying just a minute ago. This is literally like something that for some reason, I can get so many different concepts with the modular, but routing envelopes, boy, that gives me like a time every time. So if you're following me on Instagram, Electronic Sounds, I put a little graphic up there that literally just sketches out like how it goes, and it's really simple. And I usually refer to that as I'm setting things up, but of course I didn't here and made me look the fool a little bit. Okay, but we've definitely got to start here. I'm running a tempo of 120 beats per minute out of the Digitact. That's going into the Poly 2. We're sending the clock signal to a multiplier, a multiple, so that I can send that clock signal out to different locations in the rack. We're currently using the clock signal to trigger the Mazatron Golden Shower to set its tempo, its clock, and then all I have to do is select a pattern, and it's triggering this envelope to play. Maybe the next thing we can do is get ourselves a little bit of a rhythm to work with by adding some hi-hats. And what we'll do is we're going to take let's see if I can just maybe take a copy of the clock and run that into the trigger input of a hi-hat module. We're going to take I usually have my cables a little bit better organized here, but since we're live streaming and I'm just kind of trying to go quickly, we're going to be taking the out from this hat, which is already triggering, and we're going to go ahead and run that into an input. This is pretty messy, actually. I'm sorry. Let me get a different, maybe a more appropriate sized cable for us. Okay, so out to the in, and we're going to run this. Actually, I'm going to run this over here on 6, and we're going to run these hats on 3. Let me fix the panning over here. Bear with me. And, okay, so 3. And, okay, cool. So now we've got some hats happening. I think what we're going to do, rather than send the clock directly to the hat, is go ahead and send the clock to a Euclidean sequencer module from 2HP. This is the 2HP Euclid. And we're also going to need to reset the Euclid. sequencer so that it knows what the 1 is, what the downbeat is, so that everything can kind of sync up together. We're going to go ahead and take that trigger, and I've got a start and stop signal coming out of the set already to be coming out of the poly and poly 2. So when I press play over here on the Digitact, it sends a start stop signal out into the case, and I'm plugging that into the trigger. Actually, we'll go ahead and multiply that. We'll go ahead and get that ready to send to multiple locations, the same way that I did with the clock, so that I can send this start and stop signal to multiple locations. So I'm going to plug that into the multiple, and we're going to take our start and stop signal and plug that into the multiple. So now I've got more available locations so that I can send our clock anywhere I want, and I can send our start stop signal anywhere I want in the case as well. So now we have a Euclidean sequencer that's generating some trigger rhythms, and I'm going to go ahead and plug an output from that into the input of our hi-hat. Cool. And now let's see here. All right. See what I said earlier, if you were with me earlier, about there's not really a way to just sort of start and stop the system per se. Once I've got like a clock signal from the Digitact going into the system, it's pretty much going. Whether I press stop or not, it's, still going. If I press play, it sends out that reset signal and gets everything kind of in time together. But until that, happens, there's no way to just sort of press stop. So I'm using the master volume as a way to just kind of, be able to talk without having to talk over it 100% of the time. Yeah, no screen. I do have a sequencer module. We're using the Mazatron Golden Shower sequencer to trigger the envelope on this chord, and we're using the Euclid sequencer from 2HP, which is a Euclidean sequencer, to sequence these hi-hats. I'm going to go ahead and take an output now from a gate output rather from the Poly 2, and we're going to go ahead and run that into let's use the Bifaco kick-all module. I'm going to use gate output, and we're going to run that into the trigger input of the kick, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my first MIDI track on the Digitact, which should be set up to send out on this channel, and I can see that the light on the Bifaco kick-all is lighting up, so I'm triggering that module, and we're going to go ahead and get a volume here from the kick out to the system. Now, I need the kick drum to be the loudest thing in the mix, the loudest thing in the system, so if I plug it, directly out from the module into my mixer, and then, turn my mixer up, it's going to allow me to turn the volume on that kick from 1 to 10. And that's great and all, but what we really need is we need a way to get that a little bit louder. So I've got the Vermona Amplinator 3, okay? And basically, for you Spinal Tap fans that like things to go to 11, this is pretty cool, but it goes to 20. It literally goes to 20. So we're going to be taking the output from our kick drum that I'm triggering with a MIDI signal from the Digitact. We're going to run that into the input on the Amplinator 3. We're going to run an output from the Amplinator 3 into channel 1 of my mixer. We're going to turn the volume on the mixer all the way up, make sure that the EQ is set accordingly, and now we've got a kick drum happening. And this is a real-time, like, analog kick drum module, which allows me to do all sorts of stuff, like shape the kick drum. It allows me to create the kick drum using a sine wave, or this big gray knob here in the middle turns this sine wave into a pulse wave, a square wave, and it gets a really distorted and aggressive kick drum. Let me show you what that sounds like when I turn this knob. So the reason that I decided on the Bifacco kick-all was all of this real-time sculpting. Again, I really love the live jams, and I'm trying to learn how to use these modules in real time so that I can get in here and sort of ebb and flow and have fun turning things on and turning things off, you know, live jamming. You've got control over the bend time, and you've got control over the tuning of the kick drum, so you can make all kind of crazy sounds, you know. You've got control over this bend feature, so you can get, you know, some pretty hard knocking kick drum here. Now remember, those of you who were with me in the beginning when I had the original kick drum running into this WMD Devices carbon filter that allows me to get a little bit of grit and saturation on that sound. Let's go ahead and do that same thing with this kick drum. I'm going to take an out from the amplinator into the input on this WMD Devices carbon filter, and we're going to take an output of the low pass output, and we're going to run that into the mixer. So now the kick drum is being sent through this filter, and it's a low pass filter right now, so I can filter out the high frequencies just like you would expect. Hey, what's happening, Jim? Thanks for tuning in. But the bonus, again, this is what I'm loving about this filter, is that let's turn the extra saturation on. And there's 3 levels of it now. Hear that kick drum getting, let's turn it off. Hear that kick drum getting really nasty now? But I'm able to kind of shape the tonal quality of it using the filter in real time. Okay, so I have one more level of that distortion. I mean, oh, just redonkulous, right? But we can just turn it off. Kind of have our regular kick drum as well. And I love that I can do all of that in real time. I figure if I can get, you know, really used to working this system, those are the tools that are going to be able to make my live jams, you know, take them to a whole nother level. All right. So we've got a hi-hat, we've got some chords, and we've got the kick drum. Let me just sort of mix this a little bit. I'm on headphones, so it's not going to be super probably perfect sound. I always, you know, use these plugins inside of Ableton. I'll take an audio from my mixer, run that into Ableton, just so that I can kind of visualize the levels and whatnot that's going on. And we'll keep that open so I can kind of mix this a little better to the hat. And then the hat's coming in on 3. Cool. So. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some movement happening in this hi-hat. This is the beauty of like getting a sound from a module as opposed to like just using a sample, which is static. I mean, you can run a sample through a filter and through panning and through effects and stuff, but you're not gonna, you know, change the tonality of the, you know, original form of that sound, whereas you're going to when you're doing it with an analog module in real time. So what we're going to do here, turn this down a little bit, is I've got the, let's use the Oct module from DivKid, okay? And what this is it's 8 individual LFOs that are not specifically synced to each other, but more tuned to kind of help your system feel alive when you start routing it to these destinations that we're going to do today. What we're going to do is we're going to take an output from the DivKid Oct, which is again just 8 triangle LFOs, and I'm gonna run this into a module from IntelliGel. I believe this is called the Quadrat, if I'm not mistaken. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to take an LFO signal that's maybe, at full strength, bending very far up and down. Okay, see my hand, okay? And like it allows me to shorten the distance of that LFO signal. Not the speed, not the rate, but just how far it goes up and down. So for instance, if we were to assign an LFO to our pitch, it's going to go very high and very low. But if we turn this amount down using this quadrant here, I'm basically limiting the amount of range of this signal. And what we're going to do is we're going to fine tune that. We're going to dial that right in to get some movement happening on these hi-hats. Let's take an out here from that. Now basically the knob on the quadrat is just that. It allows me to, if it's fully open, it will send the full width of the LFO signal, but the more I close that knob down, the less width there is in the range of the LFO signal. I hope that makes sense. What we're going to do is I'm going to mute that big kick drum here so we can hear these hi-hats really well. And I'm going to show you, if I turn this knob here, we turn from more of a closed hi-hat sound to an open hi-hat sound. Okay, so what let's do, I could sit here with my hand on that knob and move that knob in real time, but I only have so many hands. So let's assign something to do that for us. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to assign an LFO to move this knob for us. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this one in. And if I turn the amount all the way up here, this is a really slow LFO. There we go. Oops, I'm plugging that into the wrong port. I meant to plug it into this one. There we go. So what we're hearing now, I'm going to slow this down just a little more. They're increasingly slower LFOs as you plug them in down the chain. You've got 8 outputs, the first output being a faster LFO, and then ever increasingly slower, okay? So now, we're hearing on its own, listen closely, it's opening up now. So we've got full control over the amount that this is going to actually open and close by using the attenuator on the quadrat here. So if I turn that way down, we should start to get more of a subtle movement happening on that hi-hat instead of opening up all the way. There we go. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take another output from this LFO, which is running a little bit faster. We're going to run this into the quadrat again so that I can attenuate the amount of this LFO, and then we can dial it into a custom setting of our liking. If I move the sizzle knob on the hi-hat module, you can hear that it sort of, changes the tone of this sound, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in a cable to modulate that movement. Let me get a little bit longer one here. We're already modulating the decay. Now we're going to automate this amount of sizzle by turning this knob up just a little bit. If I have it up all the way, now you can hear that kind of pitch movement, and we're really getting a lot of, movement in the sound, but I don't want it to be even remotely that much. So we will limit the amount of movement, but you can hear now that instead of just getting that static hi-hat that we were getting before, remember, where there's no movement, now we start adding a bit of life to the sound. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Greetings from Germany. Cool, all right. Okay, So let's go ahead and take these chords and make them a little bit more exciting now. We've got the chords being created from the plates module, and all it's doing is just sustaining that sound. We've got that sustained sound running into an envelope, and I'm using the Masotron Golden Shower sequencer to trigger when the envelope opens and closes. Let's go ahead and take the output of those chords, and let's run that into the new Desmoda's Versio reverb plugin from Noise Engineering and put these chords through this gorgeous reverb. So we'll take an out from the VCA. We're going to use one of these cables that turns the mono signal into duplicate 2 mono signals, and I'm going to run that into the Desmoda's Versio. And then we're going to need a couple of plugins to run this to the mixer, and this is getting our this is also getting our mono chords signal through. This is a stereo reverb, so we're going to be running a stereo out now, out left. Make sure these are down. Out left to the left, and out right to the right. And this is one of the reasons why it was so important for me to get this particular mixer with built-in panning and built-in EQ, so that I can really have these customizations and how I'm routing the sounds and whatnot. Excuse me for one sec. Live streaming makes me dry mouth. Okay, so now we've got the chords running through the filter, and if I turn this up, we're not going to hear the chords yet. And there we go. Now there's our chords, and if I turn the dry wet up, thanks for tuning in, Russ. I'm hoping to do a lot more of these modular Eurorack patch labs. If this works out, I'm going to need to watch it back, see if I'm happy with the sound and all that kind of stuff. But thanks for tuning in. Okay, so what we've got here, we've got some reverb happening now on these chords, but they're still really plain. Nothing's really happening. They're not moving or anything. So let's try to get some movement happening on these chords. What we're going to do is, since I'm running the chords through a high-pass filter, we'll just try to get a little bit of movement on that high-pass filter. Now, remember the same way that I, was able to assign an LFO to the Quadrat and then shorten the, the amount of LFO range that we're sending to that signal? That's what I'm going to attempt to do with the cutoff on the filter. What we're going to do is we're going to take another LFO out from the DivKit Oct module. I'm going to take a faster one this time, and we're going to run that into the, I'm going to need a tiny little bit longer cable here. We're going to run that LFO into the input C on the Quadrat. The Quadrat gives you 4 of these knobs. You can use it as an audio mixer, a CV mixer, but the reason that I got it was to use it, I believe I'm saying this right, as an attenuator for CV signals. Ooh, cool. So, I'm going to need a longer cable than this. Let me grab some of these longer ones off the rack over here so I don't have to keep jumping in front of the camera. I don't really have a system yet for how I would sort of be doing this live, because this is the first time, so thanks for your patience and all. We're going to go ahead and run an output from that Quadrat that we're sending an LFO to into the FM frequency modulation amount of this filter. And so when I turn this up now, we should start getting some movement on that filter. And it's working. So the more I move this knob, you can hear that filter moving. I think I'd like it to move a little bit slower. So we're going to plug it into a slower LFO. That might be too slow, because now we're not really hearing much movement. There it is. Hear it moving. Cool. That's odd. Kick drum is being weird. Let's see if I can figure out why. Let's see here. I'm on track here and MIDI to channel 1, and there's a pattern, but it's not playing anymore. That's weird. It was playing a minute ago. Oh, the module is not happy. For instance, it's really not happy. Okay, what we're gonna do, see, which volume are you guys on? This one. And I believe now you guys should have volume again. Do you guys have volume again? Right. Okay, I've got the kick reset. Cool. So if I press play, 3 and I don't know why that happened. That was a really weird one. You saw it here. How to get your Eurorack to freak out on you. Okay, but now we've got everything in time. We've got this kick drum happening. We've got this hi-hat moving around in the background, being sequenced from this Euclidean sequencer from 2HP. We've assigned some LFOs to that hi-hat, so it's moving. And we've got some now movement happening on that chord, a little bit of movement happening on the chord as well with the filter. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Let's go ahead and see if we can get, no, let's leave that. That's cool. I'm just putting a little bit of the lows down on the chords. Let's go ahead and see if we can add a clap to this groove. What we're going to do is I'm going to try to trigger the clap using the Digitact. We're going to take an output, a gate output from the Poly In to Poly 2 module, and I'm going to run that directly into the input of a Tip Top Audio 1 sample module, and this is loaded up with a whole bunch of clap samples that I've already put together from my sample packs in there for me to play with. We're going to go ahead and take it out from that module. We'll run that into our mixer. And I'll turn that channel down for now, so we're not going to get super loud off the jump. And let's see if we can get some audio over here. I'm running this not right or something. What am I doing wrong? Wow. I get sometimes a little bit confused because there is no start and stop. So here I am trying to hear audio, thinking like in my brain, like I'm working with anything else, that it's stopped, but you can still go. But it's not stopped. It's just got the volume down. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we can use a knob on the module to just scroll through some samples. I've got 145 clap samples loaded onto this card. We're not going to scroll through all of them. Yeah. Oh my gosh, my kingdom for an undo button. My kingdom for an undo button. Yeah, that's right. The more plugs you have, the more confused you might get. Tell me about it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and trigger that clap. We're going to be using, let's say, track 2 of my MIDI tracks here on the Digitact. We're assigned to MIDI channel 2, which is what I want. And now we've got the clap coming through. And I can scroll through some different claps maybe. Kind of like that one, it's kind of plain. You can also, with these modules, tune the sample. So we'll do that a little bit until we can really fit it in the mix. Here's an idea of what I'm talking about. Here's me changing the, the pitch on the clap. Yes, Sean, I am sequencing from the Digitact. The Digitact is, believe it or not, I think probably my all-time favorite piece of gear. I never knew, like years ago when people were, using these and talking about how amazing they were, that it was going to be something that just rocked my world. I got into the Digitact of last year or maybe the year before, and I just can't get enough. This is an amazing, amazing piece of gear. You've got 8 sample tracks on the top where you can, have samples, and you've got 8 MIDI tracks on the bottom. I'm using the MIDI tracks to control my modular system. That was one of the things that I really, really wanted when setting this up, is I really wanted total integration of, of all of my gear so that I would be able to, I've got the octopus here. That's kind of my whole concept with the studio. I consider myself a hybrid producer, and I really want to connect as many different things in as many different ways as possible. So I've got the MIDI coming out of the Digitact. It's running into a little MIDI dongle, and that's plugging directly into the Poly-Int Poly 2 module. Now what this does is it allows me to send gate and CV information out of up to 8 different output. You can have up to 8 different pairs of CV and gate information. And so I figured this is kind of like perfect because we've got 8 MIDI tracks in the Digitact. So I'm able to, if I want, I can send CV information and program, these knobs to be moving from the sequencer, but I haven't really gotten quite that deep yet. All I'm doing right now is trying to figure out the way to get the tightest sync between the MIDI clock coming into the system through the Poly 2 and the samples being triggered in the system from the MIDI tracks on the Digitact. Very hard to get Digitact at the moment. I'm not surprised. I don't see a lot of people selling them. I actually have 2. They're just... anyways, I'm not going to turn this into a Digitact love affair poem, but... oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going here. We're triggering the kick drum and the clap from MIDI information from the Digitact. And everything else is being triggered from the MIDI clock being sent into the system from the Digitact. Again, we're running the MIDI clock into a Euclidean sequencer to get our hat pattern. And we're running the MIDI clock into this Mazatron Golden Shower sequencer to get the envelope pattern happening for our pad sound, our chords. So if I turn this off, it's no longer triggering that envelope. And in real time, we can just kind of turn this switch and it'll trigger the envelope again to whatever pattern it lands on. Let's rock with this one for a bit. Cool. Let's see if we can... let's go ahead and let's duplicate this, our clock signal. One more time. Again, this is why I got this really big multiple here, the 07 mult, that allows me to send a clock to lots of different places. We're going to take an output from there into a second Euclidean sequencer. So that sequencer is now running along with our clock. That sequencer needs to know when the 1 is. It needs to have a reset, a start, and a stop. So I'm going to go ahead and take the signal that I'm sending a start and stop from. We've got that multiplied, so I can send the start and stop and the clock to different locations. So we're going to plug the clock and the reset into this Euclidean sequencer, which is already spitting out note information. Now I'm going to mess with this, and we'll try to trigger the snare drum module from 2HP, which I'm using not necessarily as a snare, but also as a snare, but more for like percussion and sort of rhythms and whatnot. So we're going to take an output from this sequencer, which is now got the reset, and it knows what the 1 is because I started and stopped the digitact, which sends that start and stop message through the Poly 2, okay? We're going to run this into the input of my snare. We're going to take the output of the snare. I'm going to need a longer cable here. We're going to take the, let's see, do I connect ground over here? We're going to take the out from that snare directly into our mixer module here. Okay. And now we've got the snare putting out a percussion pattern over the groove here. So I can change that. We can maybe create something groovy. We'll make all these steps. And now let's see here. Yeah, that sounds alright. And we can mess with the pitch of that. Again, we're triggering the snare sound from the 2HP snare module. Depending on how you set it, you can have it sounding more like a snare drum, or more like kind of a little percussion sound. Kind of a high-pitched percussion sound there. So you can hear that we've got the percussion now, the hi-hat, and the clap kind of moving along in the background. We can add those chords in. And 1, 2, 3, turn the kick on. Kind of a thing happening now. We've got a little bit of movement happening on the chords. We've got a little bit of movement happening on our hi-hat. Well, we've built up a groove from absolutely nothing. And I think for my very first modular patch lab, this went okay. If you guys could hear me okay, I'd say that's a pretty good start right there. I want to say to everybody, thanks for tuning in. And hopefully, we're going to be doing a lot more of these as I get a little bit more familiar with how to use all these modules. I've got another module that's set to go right here, and another module that's set to go right here. And then case number 1 is completely full. I've got a few more modules that are coming for case number 2, and I've got another sequencer module that's going to fit in this empty slot for my little sample expander here. Let's talk about this little sample expander here for a second, shall we? This little case here was an amazing find. This is from 4MS, and as I was saying earlier, I kind of quickly outgrew my very first case idea, which was the IntelliGel palette case. Very small case, not a lot bigger than this really. But the more I researched these modules and how they work, and the more I got into it, the more I realized I was going to need something bigger. But I ended up filling up my first case so quickly that I didn't know what to do. This was a pretty expensive case from NDLR. It was more than twice the cost of the Tip Top Mantis. It's actually a flight case, and it has a lid, and it's amazing strong. It's not like I'm going to be going flying around the world touring for modular, but I wanted um, this is a really serious investment. This is like a lifelong kind of investment for me, and I really wanted to do it right. Um, so I wanted to get a really solid case to begin with. Unfortunately, I realized that it wasn't going to be enough to hold all the modules that I wanted, and I instantly went looking for other options. And instead of getting into another large case, I sort of fooled myself that just a little something on the side might be enough as an expansion or whatever. And I had fallen in love with the new Squarp Rample. This is a sample player. It allows you to load 12 samples into each of the 4 slots, and by default, it plays back those samples randomly. As a sample maker and as a sample-based workflow producer, that's beyond dreamy to me personally, and the possibilities in the Rample are just amazing. So what I've got here is I've got a sequencer that's able to trigger some of these samples, and then I've got a 4 channel mixer with panning from Dopefer that allows me, that's going to allow me to mix all of these together and whatnot. I've got another sequencer that's going here that actually will sequence 3 tracks. So between that sequencer, it's called the Dot. It'll be here hopefully soon. It's been on the way for quite some time. Um, that will allow me to literally sequence all 4 tracks within the box itself. The Tip Top Audio Mantis case, which is over here on the right, I've got a few modules that are going to fill in some of these empty slots, and then plenty of room to keep expanding and adding new modules as my journey into this modular rabbit hole continues. Over here, we've got a sequencer that I still need to get to terms with, and what's going to be going next to this is a quad quantizer, which is going to allow me to take signals from this sequencer and create really neat arpeggios, and then quantize those to like a specific key to keep everything kind of in key with each other. It's been really an exciting journey so far. A lot more complicated and a lot more expensive than I was thinking it was going to be. I hear that's pretty much the case with everybody who gets into this sort of thing. But so far, I'm absolutely loving this journey. These toys are amazingly fun to play with, and I can't wait to continue doing sound design with them. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We're going to see you next time on the next patch session. Thanks a lot.